Hi, welcome to Citizen Survival Plan, and in today's video, I want to show you a nice, affordable way to make a good amount of power. What I've put together here is about 1,200 watt hours of power and 2,000 watts of running power for just under $700. I really want to share it, and I want to show you exactly what you're going to need to make it. It's not complicated at all, and it works really well. I use it to run all my radio equipment and some other things that you can plug in and run during an emergency. So let's get right into the video. The first thing you're going to need is just a battery. For this, I picked the Orion 1000. This is a Golden Mate Orion 1000. It is 1,200 watt hours of power and has a really cool screen on it to tell you how much power you're using, how much power is going into the battery, and a meter on it to tell you how much power is left in the battery. My biggest problem with people making these solar stations is they always use a blank battery with no meter on it telling you how much power is actually in the battery. The second thing is just a battery charge cable. All this does is clip to the two terminals. It has an SAE connection on the end that you can plug up to your solar panel. The next thing in line is the SAE charge cable to a DC 8mm. This is going to connect to your solar panel. For the solar panel for this, it is going to be a Renogy 200 watt panel. So it gives you a good amount of power. It will charge this thing up relatively quickly. And then running in the middle, I'm going to show you how this works, is an inline solar controller. This simply goes between the battery terminal cable and the 8mm cable that runs to your solar panel. I've included in this an extension cable. You may or may not need this depending on how far you're actually going to run it to the battery. And the last and most important thing in this is an inverter. This is a 2,000 watt Voltworks inverter. It's got a fan. It seems pretty nice. It runs nice clean power. I've tested it with my radios. I have no buzzing or anything. It is a pure sine wave inverter.
Okay, so let's go over the actual parts on this, how it's all connected. I'm going to run you through it. It's really simple. Okay, so I'm going to work you in from where the solar panel would plug in. This is a DC 8mm plug, and it is running up. I just have it zip tied here just to keep it neat, but it basically runs to this SAE connector here that is connected to the solar controller. So you're coming in through the solar, running up through this. So here's the solar controller. So at the end of this SAE connector, at the end of the solar controller, this is your connector here. You have to run this adapter in the middle because you'll be plugging positive to negative and you'll be reversing the polarity. So that has got to be there. And then this basically just runs up underneath where I have my inverter plugged in, and the charge cables are just right there. So it's really simple. The power just comes in and charges it. And then this is the Orion 1000 battery pack that I'm using. And it's got the meter on it. And when it's running, it's got the input and output volts that you're running off of it. And then let's follow the cables out from where I have it hooked to the battery. And this is just the Voltworks inverter. So this is the inverter that I picked for the project. It seems pretty nice. It's a pure sine wave inverter. It's 2,000 watts, so you can run some pretty heavy duty stuff off of it. We're going to do a little demo here. I'm just going to plug a hot plate into it and kind of just show you how the system works, just so I can show you really drawing a good amount of power from it. All right, let's turn the inverter on, and we're going to take some power out of this thing, and let's run a hot plate. We'll see how much power we can pull from it. You could see the battery meter up here. We're pulling over 1,000 watts, and this thing has no problem doing it. Obviously, the inverter's fine, and the battery can handle it as well. So if you ever need to run a hot plate, I've even plugged an 1,800 watt heater into this thing and ran it for a sec. It's not advised, but it will handle it. Okay, so we're going to kick the radio on here, and I'm just going to kind of show. This is normally how I have it set up. There's no antenna hooked to the radio right now because we're not going to use it, but I just want to show you the idling kind of power draw that this system is going to run with something like that through the inverter. So it'll sit at about 17 watts just idling. Obviously, if I key that 50-watt radio up, we're going to draw, over 100 watts, but it's only short bursts of power. So the radio equipment that I usually run on this, it will idle for literally 4 or 5 days, receiving, and there's no issues. It will run like that forever. I also keep the solar panel just plugged in. So every morning and every day, it just recharges everything. So this is a really cool setup if you want to run a radio indefinitely. With that 200-watt solar panel, this thing can stay on all day, 24/7. The biggest pro to this system is its price tag. So you can get the solar panel and all of this hooked up for a little under $700. You will not be able to find a quality power station at that price point that you can build this system at. So it's a good way to get into this at a really good price. It offers some passive charging, and this is really where this system does not compare to a real solar power station. I will run the radio equipment idling at 17 or even something maybe at 20 or 25, maybe even 50 watts. I wouldn't run anything more than that when you're passive charging this system, just because everything is running through those 2 terminals on that battery. That's another really cool thing about this. I plug the solar panel in to this and I just forget about it. The sun comes out, it recharges it while my radio is running, and there's no power drain. So when I run my Opus like that, what will happen is, and I think other power stations can be like this too, when you have the solar plugged in and the sun goes away, it will leave the machine on, draining the battery. This thing's really good at shutting down and not burning any power when the sun's not shining on it. This solar controller that is on the unit basically doesn't use any power. If I put this thing away at 98% and the sun doesn't shine for 4 or 5 days, that battery will still be at 98% days later with no sun. So this setup doesn't have any parasitic draw to it. Something you can do with this that is really cool that I didn't do, but you can do, is this can be expanded to 4 times the power. You can run 4 of these Orion battery packs in series, giving you a ton of stored power. A big con to the system, and that's what I'm going to get into now, is this is not portable. This is basically home tabletop power that you're going to have at your house. Now, someone out there is going to make a box or make something that they could build this out of. But in my opinion, once you start doing that, you're putting a lot of time, energy, and additional money into something that was supposed to be a cheap setup. So I don't do that. If I want something portable, I'm just going to buy a power station. Again, the passive charging on this is not what you're going to get on like an Opus or a Jackery or something. It doesn't do passive charging very well, but running light duty stuff will be just fine. The last drawback to this system that I noticed is the terminals are just exposed. There's exposed wiring here, so it's not as safe probably as a power station. If you run anything over 1,000 watts through this, you will feel these terminals get warm. And I know some people might say that it's not hooked up right. It is. I hooked them up exactly per the instructions from Orion or Golden Mate, the one who makes the battery. And these bolts are tight. They're in there. But when you run that much voltage and wattage through it, you're just going to heat these wires up a little bit. There's nothing you can do. Thanks for watching. I hope this video helps. You don't have to make this exactly the way that I did mine, but it's a good place to start, and it's nice and simple, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to use in your home-built power station. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.